There are phone calls that change your life. Not the dramatic, middle-of-the-night kind signaling tragedy, but quiet, afternoon calls that rearrange your world in ways you never saw coming. Mine came on a Tuesday, a perfectly ordinary Tuesday in early autumn, the kind where the leaves are just starting to turn gold and the air holds a crisp promise. I was humming, watering my ferns, thinking about what snacks Emma, Noah, and Lily might like when they came over on Friday. Our standing date for the past 7 years, 7 years of Fridays filled with storybooks, finger paints, backyard adventures, and the sticky sweetness of shared cookies. 7 years of being Grandma Susan, a role I cherished more than any other. Then the phone rang. It was Sarah, my daughter-in-law. Her voice was different. Usually, it held a polite, slightly stressed efficiency, the tone of a busy mom juggling work, kids, and life. Today, it was flat, devoid of warmth, almost rehearsed. "Susan," she said, skipping the usual pleasantries. "Michael and I have been talking. We've decided it's best if you take a break from seeing the kids for a while." I froze, the watering can tipping slightly in my hand, spilling onto the floor. "A break? Sarah, what are you talking about? Is everything all right? Are the kids okay?" My mind raced through a dozen possibilities. Illness, a sudden family emergency. "Everyone's fine," she replied, her voice still unnervingly level. "We just feel, well, your methods are a bit outdated. We want consistency in their upbringing, and frankly, your approach doesn't align with ours anymore." "Outdated methods?" The words hung in the air, sharp and stinging. "What methods? Letting them make mud pies in the garden? Reading classic fairy tales instead of whatever educational program was trending? Letting Lily, my precious 4-year-old Lily, have an extra cookie?" My mind scrambled, trying to grasp what I could have possibly done to warrant this sudden exile. 7 years of Fridays, 7 years of pouring my love and energy into those children. 7 years of being a constant, reliable presence in their lives. And now, I was outdated? "Sarah, I don't understand," I stammered, the shock making it hard to form coherent thoughts. "If there's something specific I've done, please tell me. We can talk about it. I only want what's best for Emma, Noah, and Lily. You know that." "There's nothing specific to discuss," she said, the finality in her voice like a slamming door. "This is our decision as parents. Michael agrees. We feel this is necessary for the children's development. We'll let you know when we feel it's appropriate for visits to resume." And then, after a brief, awkward silence, she added a clipped, "I have to go." And the line went dead. I stood there in my sunny kitchen, the forgotten watering can dripping onto the linoleum, the silence deafening. My heart felt like it had been physically squeezed, outdated, dismissed, banned. After 7 years of unwavering devotion, 7 years where my Fridays were the anchor of my week, the source of my greatest joy, I was suddenly barred from seeing my own grandchildren. The children I loved more than life itself. Emma, my thoughtful 10-year-old bookworm, already showing glimpses of the intelligent young woman she would become. Noah, my energetic 7-year-old dinosaur expert, with his boundless curiosity and infectious grin. And little Lily, the giggling, bright-eyed 4-year-old who still fit perfectly in my lap for cuddles. The thought of not seeing them, not hearing their laughter echo through my house, not feeling their small arms wrapped around my neck, it was unbearable. It felt like a part of me had been amputated without warning, without anesthesia. My relationship with Sarah had always been polite, correct. We respected each other, I thought, but we never quite clicked in that warm, easy way some mothers and daughters-in-law seem to manage. She was ambitious, focused on her career in marketing before she had the kids, and even now, juggling part-time work with motherhood, she always seemed meticulously put together, her house immaculate, her schedule organized down to the minute. I, on the other hand, am more of a homebody, someone who finds joy in gardening, baking, and the comfortable chaos of grandchildren's playtimes. Maybe that was the clash. My outdated methods were simply too messy, too unstructured for her liking. I had always tried to respect her parenting choices, even when they differed from my own instincts, biting my tongue when I thought she was perhaps too strict or pushed Emma a little too hard with extracurriculars. I figured harmony was more important than being right. But clearly, my deference hadn't been enough. What hurt almost as much as Sarah's words was Michael's silence. My son, my steady, reliable Michael. When I finally reached him later that evening, he was away on one of his frequent business trips. His response was vague, uncomfortable. "Mom, Sarah explained it. We just need some space right now. It's for the kids. We need to be on the same page with parenting." "But Michael, what page is that? What did I do?" I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. 7 years, honey. I love those kids." "I know you do, Mom," he sighed, sounding tired and distant. "Look, I trust Sarah's judgment on this. She's with them every day. Let's just give it some time, okay? I gotta go. My flight's boarding." He trusted Sarah's judgment. He didn't ask for my side, didn't question the abruptness, didn't defend the woman who had raised him, who had adored his children since the moment they were born. He just deferred. The feeling of betrayal wasn't sharp like Sarah's dismissal. It was a dull, heavy ache deep in my chest. My own son, siding against me without even understanding why. I felt utterly alone, adrift. The days that followed were shrouded in a fog of grief and confusion. My house felt too quiet, too empty. Fridays were the worst. I'd find myself automatically reaching for the picture books, glancing at the clock expecting their arrival, the silence amplifying the hollow ache in my heart. I missed their noisy energy, their sticky fingerprints on my windows, the way Noah would narrate elaborate dinosaur battles, Emma's quiet concentration as she drew, Lily's delighted shrieks during games of hide and seek. I missed the weight of Lily asleep on my shoulder, the scent of bubble bath and childhood clinging to her hair. It wasn't just the activities I missed. It was the connection, the pure, unconditional love that flows between a grandparent and a grandchild. Being cut off felt like a vital lifeline had been severed. I replayed Sarah's words over and over. Outdated methods, consistency. It felt flimsy, illogical. Why now, after 7 years? Why so sudden, so absolute? There had been no specific incident, no argument, no warning sign. It just didn't add up. A nagging feeling began to sprout in the back of my mind, a sense that there was more to this story, something Sarah wasn't saying, something Michael perhaps didn't even know. Sarah had always seemed a bit high-strung, easily overwhelmed despite her organized exterior. Michael traveled so much for work, leaving her alone with the 3 young children for days, sometimes weeks, at a time. It couldn't be easy. Had something happened? Was she struggling more than she let on? Was pushing me away a strange, misguided attempt to regain control over a situation that felt like it was slipping away from her? The uncertainty was agonizing. I felt powerless, locked out not just from my grandchildren's lives, but from the truth itself. I could feel it, a cold knot of intuition tightening in my gut. Something was wrong in that house, something beyond parenting philosophies or outdated methods. But standing on the outside, looking in through a door that had been firmly shut in my face, how could I possibly find out what it was? How could I protect the children I loved so dearly when I wasn't even allowed near them? The weeks following the ban dragged on, each one heavier than the last. The silence from Michael and Sarah's house was absolute. My calls to Michael often went to voicemail, citing his busy travel schedule. When we did speak, His conversations were brief, strained, carefully skirting around the topic of me seeing the children. He'd offer vague assurances like, "Things are settling down," or "Sarah just needs some time." But there was never a concrete explanation, never an indication of when this break might end. It felt like hitting a padded wall. My questions and pleas for understanding were simply absorbed without impact. My attempts to reach out to Sarah directly were met with polite but firm deflections. Texts went unanswered for days, and when she did reply, it was with short, impersonal messages about the kids being busy with school or activities. The warmth, however superficial it might have been before, was completely gone, replaced by a chilling efficiency that kept me firmly at arm's length. It was clear the door wasn't just closed, it was bolted. The frustration and helplessness were immense. I felt like I was grieving, not for a death, but for a living loss. The loss of connection, the loss of my role, the loss of those precious everyday moments. Friends tried to offer comfort, suggesting I focus on my hobbies, travel, enjoy my freedom. They meant well, but they didn't understand. Being Grandma Susan wasn't a hobby. It was woven into the fabric of my being. How could I simply replace that? But beneath the grief, that persistent flicker of unease remained. Sarah's explanation felt increasingly hollow, illogical. If it was truly about parenting styles, wouldn't there have been discussions, attempts to find common ground before resorting to a complete ban? Wouldn't Michael, my usually reasonable son, have insisted on more explanation? The suddenness, the absoluteness of it, it felt disproportionate, almost desperate. My grandmotherly instincts, honed over years of reading subtle cues and unspoken emotions, were screaming that something was wrong. I started driving past their house occasionally, usually on my way to the grocery store or library. I told myself I was just checking, ensuring the house looked okay, that there were no obvious signs of distress. It felt slightly shameful, like spying, but the worry gnawed at me. From the street, everything looked normal. The lawn was mowed, toys were scattered in the yard, lights went on and off at expected times. But normalcy can be a thin veneer. Then came the first crack. It happened about a month after the ban, during a routine trip to the supermarket. I was in the cereal aisle, comparing fiber content, when I heard a familiar little voice pipe up, "Grandma?" My head snapped up. There they were, Emma, Noah, and Lily, huddled around a shopping cart pushed by Sarah. My heart leaped, a confusing mix of joy and apprehension swirling within me. Lily, spotting me, broke into a wide grin and started toddling towards me, her arms outstretched. "Gamma Sue!" Before I could react, Sarah intercepted her, scooping her up almost roughly. "Lily, stay with Mommy." Her voice was sharp, tense. She looked flustered, her eyes darting around nervously as if she'd been caught doing something wrong. "Hi, Susan," she said, her tone brittle. "We were just grabbing a few things." My focus immediately shifted to the children. Seeing them up close after weeks of forced separation was like a physical blow. They looked tired. There were faint shadows under Emma's eyes, usually so bright and alert. Noah seemed less bouncy than usual, clinging to the side of the cart with uncharacteristic quietness. Even little Lily, usually a bundle of sunshine, seemed subdued in Sarah's arms, her earlier burst of excitement fading quickly. Their clothes looked clean enough, but slightly mismatched, as if they had dressed themselves without supervision. "Hello, Sarah. Hi, kids," I managed, forcing a smile, my heart aching at the visible distance between us. I knelt slightly to be closer to their level. "It's so good to see you, Munchkins." Emma offered a small, hesitant smile, her eyes flicking towards her mother nervously. Noah just stared at his shoes. Only Lily wriggled slightly, reaching a tentative hand towards me. Sarah tightened her grip on Lily, stepping back almost imperceptibly. "We really need to get going, Susan. Lots to do." Her movements were jerky, impatient. She wasn't meeting my eyes. She kept fussing with Lily's hair, adjusting items in the cart needlessly. Her skin looked pale, and there was a slight tremor in her hands as she gripped the shopping cart handle. Was it anger, nerves, or something else? She seemed overly agitated, her patience thin. When Noah asked for a specific brand of sugary cereal, she snapped, "Absolutely not! Put it back right now!" Her reaction felt disproportionate to the request, startlingly harsh compared to her usual controlled demeanor. Noah flinched, his eyes welling up slightly as he quickly returned the box to the shelf. Witnessing that brief interaction sent a fresh wave of alarm through me. Sarah had always been firm, but rarely sharp-tongued like that, especially in public. Trying to keep my voice calm and casual, I asked, "Everything okay, Sarah? You seem a bit stressed?" She shot me a sharp look, her eyes finally meeting mine, and for a split second, I saw something beyond irritation. A flash of panic, quickly masked. "We're fine," she clipped. "Just a busy week. Michael's traveling again, you know." She maneuvered the cart to leave, clearly desperate to end the encounter. As she turned, Emma, walking beside the cart, quickly, almost furtively, slipped something into my hand. It was a small, folded piece of paper. Her fingers brushed mine for just an instant, her eyes pleading before she hurried after her mother, head down. Sarah didn't seem to notice the quick exchange. My fingers closed around the small wad of paper, my heart pounding. Sarah steered the cart away quickly, pulling the children along in her wake, disappearing around the end of the aisle without a backward glance. I stood there for a moment, the bright lights of the supermarket suddenly feeling harsh and exposing. My hand trembled as I slowly unfolded the paper. It was a page torn from a child's notebook, covered in Emma's familiar, neat printing, though it looked rushed, slightly shaky. The message was short, simple, and utterly chilling. It read, "Grandma, Mommy sleeps a lot. She doesn't wake up easy. Noah burned his hand making toast. We have cereal for dinner sometimes. I miss you. Love, Emma." The air left my lungs in a rush. Sleeps a lot. Doesn't wake up easy. Noah burned his hand. Cereal for dinner. This wasn't about outdated methods. This wasn't about parenting philosophies. This was neglect. Potential danger. My vague unease crystallized into sharp, sickening fear. Emma, my responsible, observant Emma, was sending out a cry for help in the only way she could. Being cut off from loved ones, especially grandchildren, is a unique kind of pain. You worry constantly, imagining the worst, feeling utterly helpless. If you've ever been in a situation where you felt shut out, unable to reach someone you care about, know that your feelings are valid. It's a lonely and frightening place to be. I'd be grateful if you shared your own experiences or thoughts in the comments. Knowing others understand can be a lifeline. And please, consider liking this video and subscribing if my story resonates with you. Your support helps more than you know. Clutching that crumpled note, the flimsy piece of paper suddenly felt heavier than lead. My mind raced. Sarah's paleness, her agitation, her impatience, the children's tired appearance, Emma's desperate message. It all painted a terrifying picture. Michael was away, trusting his wife implicitly, while his children were potentially unsafe, being cared for by a mother who sleeps a lot and doesn't wake up easy. I knew with absolute certainty that I couldn't ignore this. I couldn't just wait for Michael to come home or for Sarah to change her mind. My grandchildren needed me. And that little note from Emma wasn't just a cry for help. It was the key I needed to unlock the truth, however painful it might be. Returning to the quiet solitude of my house felt less like entering a sanctuary and more like stepping into an echo chamber where my own anxieties ricocheted off the walls. The cheerful yellow of my kitchen, usually a source of comfort, now seemed jarringly bright against the darkness clouding my thoughts. Emma's note, smoothed out on the oak table where countless family meals had been shared, felt like an artifact from a different, more dangerous reality. I must have read it 50 times, each reading etching the words deeper into my mind. Each word a tiny hammer blow against the fragile hope I'd clung to that this was all just a misunderstanding. "Grandma, Mommy sleeps a lot." The innocent phrasing held such ominous weight. It wasn't the restorative sleep of a tired parent. It sounded like absence, like checking out. "She doesn't wake up easy." That phrase chilled me to the bone. It conjured images not of deep sleep, but of oblivion, of someone lost in a fog the children couldn't penetrate. And the consequences, stated so matter-of-factly by a 10-year-old forced into premature responsibility. Noah burned his hand making toast. My brave, boisterous Noah, my little explorer who still needed help tying his shoes, trying to navigate the dangers of a hot appliance because his mother was unavailable. How bad was the burn? Did he cry alone? Did anyone comfort him, tend to the wound properly? My heart clenched with a fierce, helpless pain. "We have cereal for dinner sometimes." It seemed minor compared to a burn, but it spoke volumes about the unraveling of basic care, the collapse of routine, the loneliness of children trying to sustain themselves on cold milk and sugary flakes while their mother was lost to them, asleep in another room. Suddenly, Sarah's flimsy excuse about outdated methods seemed not just inadequate, but insulting. It was a smokescreen, hastily thrown up to hide something far more serious. My mind raced back to the supermarket. Sarah's almost translucent pallor beneath her carefully applied makeup. The subtle but undeniable tremor in her hands as she gripped the shopping cart. The way her eyes darted nervously. The flash of raw panic I'd glimpsed before she slammed her emotional shutters down. Her impatience. The sharp tone with Noah. It wasn't just stress, was it? Was she ill? I considered diseases, conditions that could cause profound fatigue, neurological issues. Or was it depression? A deep, dark well that swallowed her energy and ability to function. I felt a flicker of compassion. Michael traveled so much, leaving her alone with 3 young children. The pressure must be immense. Motherhood, even under the best circumstances, could be isolating and overwhelming. Perhaps she was simply drowning and too proud or too ashamed to ask for help. But that phrase, "doesn't wake up easy," kept pulling me towards a darker suspicion. It resonated with stories I'd heard, hushed conversations from my nursing days about prescription drug misuse, about people chasing oblivion in little colored pills. Could Sarah, seemingly so controlled and put together, be struggling with something like that? Could she be self-medicating her stress or anxiety into a state of near constant sedation? The thought felt like a betrayal, not just of Sarah, but of Michael, of the image of the happy family I so desperately wanted to believe in. Yet, it fit the observed facts, the secrecy, the sudden ban, the neglect described by Emma, Sarah's physical state, with a terrifying coherence that simple stress or illness didn't fully explain. Protect the children. The thought became a mantra, overriding the confusing tangle of sympathy, suspicion, and my own residual hurt. My first instinct, primal and urgent, was still to grab the phone, call Michael wherever he was, and unleash the torrent of my fears. Read him Emma's note, demand he come home, shake him out of his complacent trust. He was their father. He had a right to know, a duty to act. I pictured his face, his likely reaction. Shock, disbelief, maybe anger directed at me for upsetting the delicate balance he tried to maintain. I could hear his voice, weary from travel, trying to placate me, defend his wife. "Mom, are you sure? Emma has a vivid imagination." "Sarah's just exhausted. She'd never let anything happen to them." "You're upset about the ban. Maybe you're reading too much into this?" That was the crux of my agonizing dilemma. If I called him now, without irrefutable proof, I risked everything. I risked him dismissing my legitimate fears as biased accusations from a disgruntled mother-in-law. I risked him confronting Sarah, putting her on guard, making her hide her struggles, or her addiction, if that's what it was, even more effectively. The children could be coached. Emma might be silenced, and the window into their reality, that tiny crack Emma's note had opened, would slam shut, perhaps permanently. Sarah, feeling attacked and exposed, might spiral further, making the situation even more dangerous. And my already fragile bridge to Michael could crumble entirely, leaving me truly powerless, locked out forever, while my grandchildren remained in potential peril. No. The risk was too great. As much as I yearned to share the burden, to force Michael to face this, I knew I couldn't act impulsively. I needed evidence, cold, hard, undeniable facts that would cut through his defenses and force him to confront the reality, whatever it was. Only then could we figure out how to truly help Sarah, if she needed help, and ensure the children were safe. The weight of this decision settled on my shoulders, heavy and cold. I had to become the investigator. I had to gather the proof myself. The shift inside me felt profound. The hurt, the confusion, the passive sadness that had enveloped me since Sarah's phone call began to recede, replaced by a focused, albeit anxious, determination. This wasn't about me anymore. It wasn't about being right or getting my Friday visits back. It was about those 3 little lives depending, unknowingly, on their grandmother seeing what others couldn't or wouldn't. My first step was methodical. The plain spiral notebook I purchased felt strangely alien in my hands, so different from the colorful scrapbook where I kept photos of the kids. I opened it, dated the first page, and began writing. I documented the exact date and time of the supermarket encounter, meticulously recording Sarah's appearance, the pallor, the tremor, the nervous energy. I wrote down her sharp words to Noah, my brief exchange with her. Then, I carefully transcribed Emma's note, word for word, noting the rushed handwriting. I described the children's appearance, the tiredness in their eyes, the slightly unkempt look. I vowed to keep this log diligently, recording every observation, every interaction, every attempt at contact, no matter how small. Dates, times, specific details. They were my only weapons against potential denial. Writing it all down felt like solidifying the nightmare, making it real, but also like taking the first step towards control. The next step felt far more transgressive. After a long, sleepless night spent wrestling with my conscience, picturing worst-case scenarios, a fire, an accident, Lily wandering out of the house while Sarah slept obliviously, I found myself typing discreet personal camera into my laptop's search bar. The results felt sordid, tools of espionage ill-suited to a 65-year-old grandmother whose idea of intrigue was figuring out the surprise ending in a cozy mystery novel. Shame washed over me. Was I really contemplating this? Secretly filming near my son's home? It felt like a profound violation. But then I pictured Emma's face, her pleading eyes as she slipped me the note. I thought of Noah's burned hand. Fear trumped shame. I ordered a small keychain camera, the description promising easy operation and inconspicuous appearance. When it arrived 2 days later, the tiny device felt cold and heavy in my palm, a symbol of how far things had deteriorated. I charged it, read the instructions, practiced turning it on and off, aiming it discreetly, feeling utterly foolish and deeply conflicted. I told myself, repeatedly, that it was only for emergency documentation, only if I witnessed clear neglect or danger from a distance, from the backyard. A measure of last resort. With my tools assembled, notebook, pen, camera, I focused on the plan. Michael was leaving Monday morning for 5 days. My window of opportunity. I decided against trying anything on Monday, Let Sarah adjust to being alone. Tuesday midday seemed like a possibility, perhaps again on Thursday afternoon. I needed to vary the times. I pulled up their address on an online map, zooming in, tracing the sidewalks, identifying the side street approach, pinpointing the location of the wooden gate leading to the backyard. The gardener usually came on Wednesdays, so that day was out. Would the gate be unlocked? Sarah was usually meticulous about security, but sometimes forgot things when flustered. If it was locked, I'd have to abort. I couldn't risk climbing a fence or drawing attention. I'd park my car several streets away, walk casually, trying to look like any other resident out for a stroll. If the gate was open, I'd slip in quickly, stay low near the back hedges, observe through the large kitchen window or the patio doors for no more than 20 minutes, then leave just as quietly. My heart pounded just thinking about it. What if a neighbor saw me? What if Sarah herself came outside? The risks were enormous, but the potential risk to the children felt even greater. The days leading up to Michael's departure crawled by. I felt jumpy, on edge, seeing suspicion in every casual glance from strangers. Sleep offered little respite, filled with anxious dreams. I rehearsed conversations in my head, what I'd say if caught, how I'd present the evidence to Michael if I found any. I felt like an actress preparing for a difficult role, except the stage was my family's life, and the stakes were terrifyingly real. Looking at the framed photos on my mantelpiece, Emma reading a book, Noah covered in mud and grinning, Lily laughing on a swing, solidified my resolve each time it wavered. Their innocent faces were a constant reminder of why I was doing this, why I was pushing myself so far outside my comfort zone, why I was preparing to breach the trust of my own family. It was a grandmother's vow, made in silence, but felt with every fiber of my being. I will find out the truth. I will keep you safe, no matter the cost. The thought of what I might discover during Michael's absence filled me with a mixture of dread and grim determination. I was stepping into the unknown, armed only with a notebook, a tiny camera, and a grandmother's unwavering love. Michael left early Monday morning, kissing the kids goodbye while Sarah stood beside him, offering a tired but composed smile for his benefit. I knew because I had driven past slowly, watching from a distance, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. Seeing him leave, knowing he was entrusting his children to Sarah based on a facade I suspected was crumbling, intensified my resolve and my anxiety. Tuesday, midday, arrived under a gray, heavy sky that mirrored my mood. Parking 3 blocks away, my hands felt clammy on the steering wheel. I took several deep breaths, tucked the small keychain camera into my jacket pocket, and slipped my notebook into my large purse. Walking towards their street, I tried to appear casual, just an older woman out for some air, but my heart hammered against my ribs, and every passing car felt like an accusation. As I rounded the corner onto their block, relief washed over me, mixed with a fresh wave of trepidation. The side gate was slightly ajar. The gardeners must have been there yesterday, and perhaps Sarah hadn't double-checked it, or maybe she had simply forgotten in her current state. It felt like a sign, albeit a nerve-wracking one. Glancing quickly up and down the quiet street, seeing no one, I slipped through the opening and into the familiar territory of their backyard. Instantly, I felt like an intruder, my feet sinking slightly into the damp grass. I stayed low, moving quickly behind the large lilac bushes that lined the fence, positioning myself where I had a partial view of the kitchen window and the sliding glass door to the family room, areas where the children usually played or did homework. The house was eerily quiet. No sounds of cartoons, no children's laughter, no television murmur, just silence. My eyes scanned the visible rooms, empty. Dishes were piled in the kitchen sink, more than usual for Sarah's normally tidy habits. Toys were scattered across the family room floor, Not unusual in itself, but they looked abandoned mid-play. No sign of the children, no sign of Sarah. Where were they? It was just after noon on a Tuesday. The kids should be home from morning kindergarten and preschool soon, or perhaps having lunch if they stayed home. Emma, being older, had school, but Noah and Lily? My stomach churned. I stayed hidden behind the lilacs, straining my ears, my eyes darting towards the windows. After about 10 minutes of unnerving silence, I saw movement. It was Noah, wandering into the kitchen alone. He dragged a chair over to the counter, climbed onto it precariously, and reached into a high cupboard, pulling out a box of cookies. He sat on the floor, leaning against the cabinets, methodically eating cookie after cookie, his small face serious and withdrawn. No sign of Sarah supervising, no call for lunchtime. Just my 7-year-old grandson foraging for sugary snacks by himself. My hand tightened instinctively on the keychain camera in my pocket, but I didn't take it out. This was sad, neglectful perhaps, but maybe not the concrete proof I needed. Just as Noah finished his cookies and wandered out of view, I heard Lily start to cry from somewhere deeper within the house. It wasn't a loud, demanding cry, but a fretful, tired whimper that went on and on, unanswered. My blood ran cold. Where was Sarah? Why wasn't she comforting her crying toddler? Then I saw her. Sarah drifted into the family room, visible through the sliding glass door. Drifted was the only word for it. Her movements were slow, uncoordinated, her eyes unfocused, half closed. She was wearing pajamas, her hair uncombed, her face pale and puffy. She stumbled slightly as she walked, bumping into the edge of the sofa before collapsing onto it. She didn't react to Lily's continued crying, didn't seem to even register it. Her head lolled back against the cushions, and within moments, her eyes closed completely. She was gone again, lost in that unnaturally deep sleep Emma had described. Right there, midday, while her children were awake, unsupervised, one of them crying pitifully and unanswered. My breath caught in my throat. This was it. This was the proof. Seeing Sarah like that, unresponsive, clearly incapacitated in the middle of the day while her children needed her, was far worse than anything I had imagined. Lily's whimpering continued from another room, a heartbreaking soundtrack to her mother's oblivion. Noah reappeared briefly, peeked into the family room, saw his mother slumped on the sofa, and then just retreated again, his small shoulders slumped. He knew, didn't he? He knew not to expect help. He knew Mommy was sleeping. My hand automatically went to the keychain camera. Now? Should I record this? Document her state, the unattended crying child? It felt like such a violation, filming her in her own home, in such a vulnerable, compromised state. But the image of Noah's burned hand flashed in my mind again. What if something worse happened while she was like this? What if Lily, still crying, wandered off or hurt herself? This wasn't just poor parenting. This was dangerous. Swallowing hard, feeling sick to my stomach, I fumbled the tiny camera out of my pocket, held it up discreetly, pointing it through a gap in the lilac leaves towards the glass door, and pressed the record button. I filmed for only a minute, maybe less, capturing Sarah motionless on the sofa, the sound of Lily's faint crying audible in the background, the messy room. It felt like the longest minute of my life. Then I quickly stopped recording and slipped the camera back into my pocket, my hands shaking. I couldn't stay any longer. Witnessing this felt toxic, heartbreaking. I backed away slowly, carefully, slipping out through the side gate, making sure it latched quietly behind me. My walk back to the car was a blur. My mind reeled from what I had seen. Sarah wasn't just stressed or depressed. She was clearly impaired, likely by medication. My darkest suspicions seemed confirmed. This was my dark moment. The reality was stark, ugly, and terrifying. My grandchildren were living with a mother who was frequently incapable of caring for them safely. My son was completely unaware, miles away, trusting everything was fine. I held the proof, a short, shaky video clip on a tiny device, proof that could blow their family apart. What now? The path forward seemed terrifyingly unclear. Option 1. Call Michael immediately. Send him the video. Force him to confront the undeniable truth. This would likely shatter his image of Sarah, perhaps irreparably damage their marriage. It would cause immense pain, chaos, upheaval for the children. But it would ensure their immediate safety. He would have to come home, intervene, take control. Option 2. Confront Sarah directly. Show her the video? No, that felt too aggressive, too accusatory. It might push her further into denial or despair. But perhaps talk to her? Try to understand? Offer help? This felt incredibly risky. Would she listen? Would she lash out? Would she deny everything and perhaps take steps to ensure I could never get near the children or gather evidence again? Option 3. Call Child Protective Services. The thought made me shudder. Involving strangers, the authorities, felt like a drastic, irreversible step, one that could traumatize the children and stigmatize the family forever. But wasn't their safety the absolute priority? If Sarah was truly addicted and neglectful, wasn't it my duty? My mind wrestled with the options, each one seeming fraught with peril and potential heartbreak. Blowing up their lives felt wrong. Ignoring the danger felt impossible. As I sat in my car, the gray sky outside matching the turmoil inside me, another thought began to surface, unexpected and deeply personal. I remembered a time, long ago, after Michael's father had left us. Michael was just a little boy. The stress was immense. I was working double shifts, barely sleeping, overwhelmed, and desperately lonely. A doctor had prescribed tranquilizers to help me cope with anxiety attacks. Just for a little while, he'd said. But a little while stretched on. I remembered the seductive numbness they offered, the way they quieted the frantic pace of my thoughts. I remembered sleeping too long sometimes, feeling groggy, disconnected. I never reached the point Sarah seemed to be at, thank God. I recognized the danger signs early enough, got scared, and with the help of a supportive friend and sheer willpower, I had weaned myself off them, terrified of becoming dependent, terrified of not being fully present for Michael. But I remembered the pull. I remembered the shame. I remembered the feeling of drowning and reaching for anything that felt like a life raft, even a dangerous one. Looking at Sarah through that lens, not just as the daughter-in-law who had hurt me, not just as the neglectful mother, but as potentially another woman struggling, drowning, making dangerous choices out of pain or desperation. Something shifted within me. The anger and the fear were still there, but now they were tempered with a flicker of unwelcome empathy. Was outright confrontation or involving authorities the only way? Or was there a possibility, however slim, for a different approach? An approach built not on accusation, but on shared vulnerability? My plan began to change. Forget the dramatic confrontation. Forget calling Michael immediately, unless absolutely necessary for safety. Forget CPS, at least for now. My new counterattack, if you could even call it that, wouldn't involve lawyers or authorities. It would involve walking up to Sarah's front door, not as an accuser, but perhaps as someone who understood more than she could possibly imagine. I would try to talk to her, armed not just with the evidence on the keychain camera, which I might not even need to mention initially, but with the memory of my own past struggles. Maybe, just maybe, if she saw understanding instead of judgment, she might lower her defenses enough to accept help. It felt like the riskiest option of all, emotionally. But watching her on that sofa, looking so lost and broken, I didn't just see the woman who banned me from my grandchildren. I saw a reflection, however faint, of a younger, more desperate version of myself. And I knew I had to try to reach that woman first, before bringing the walls crashing down. Could empathy be a more powerful weapon than accusation? I had to believe it was worth a try, for the sake of the children, and perhaps even for Sarah herself. The next day, Thursday, I drove back to Sarah and Michael's house. This time, I didn't park blocks away or sneak through the side gate. I parked right in front, walked up the pathway, and rang the doorbell. My heart hammered against my ribs, louder than the chime echoing inside. My notebook and the keychain camera stayed in my purse, out of sight. This wasn't about presenting evidence. Not yet. This was about connection. It took a long time for the door to open. When it finally did, Sarah stood there, looking slightly more put together than the day before, dressed in sweats, hair pulled back, but still pale, with shadows under her eyes that makeup couldn't quite conceal. She stared at me, her expression shifting from surprise to suspicion, then hardening into wary defensiveness. "Susan, what are you doing here?" Her voice was flat, guarded. "I thought I made it clear." "I know," I interrupted gently, keeping my voice soft, calm. "I know you asked for space, Sarah, and I apologize for intruding, but I needed to talk to you, privately. It's important." I tried to convey sincerity, not accusation, through my eyes. She hesitated, chewing on her lower lip, clearly debating whether to slam the door in my face. Maybe it was the lack of anger in my voice, or perhaps simple curiosity, but after a long moment, she sighed and stepped back grudgingly. "Fine, come in, but make it quick. The kids are having quiet time." I stepped inside. The house was tidier than the day before, but still held an air of neglect beneath the surface tidiness. Toys were hastily stuffed into bins, mail piled on a side table. I could hear the faint sound of a television playing in one of the back rooms. The children's quiet time. Sarah didn't invite me to sit. She stood rigidly in the entryway, arms crossed, waiting. The silence stretched, tense and awkward. This was it, my chance. Could I find the right words? "Sarah," I began, my voice trembling slightly despite my resolve. "I know things have been difficult between us, and I know my presence hasn't always been welcomed." I paused, gathering courage. "But I came here today not to talk about me, or about visiting the kids. I came because I'm worried about you." Her eyes narrowed. "Worried about me? I'm perfectly fine." "Are you?" I asked softly, holding her gaze. "Sarah, managing 3 young children, especially when Michael travels so much, it's incredibly demanding, overwhelming even. Sometimes the pressure can feel unbearable. Sometimes we look for ways to cope that aren't always healthy." She flinched, a flicker of panic crossing her face before the defensive mask slammed back down. "I don't know what you're implying, Susan, but my coping mechanisms are my own business." This was the critical point. Accusation would shut her down completely. I took a deep breath and plunged into the most vulnerable part of my past, the secret I had guarded for decades. "Many years ago," I said, my voice dropping lower, becoming more personal. "After Michael's father left, I was alone, raising Michael, working constantly. The stress, the anxiety, it was crippling. A doctor prescribed me something to help me sleep, to calm my nerves." I saw a flicker of recognition in her eyes, but she remained silent, wary. "And for a while, It felt like a miracle. It quieted the noise in my head. It let me escape. I paused, the memory still sharp, still shameful. But it became a crutch, Sarah. A dangerous one. I started needing more. I slept too much. I felt disconnected, foggy. I wasn't fully present for Michael. I looked directly at her, letting her see the raw honesty, the remembered pain in my eyes. I realized I was heading down a dangerous path. It terrified me. Getting off those pills, reclaiming myself. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I couldn't have done it without help, without admitting I had a problem. Sarah stared at me, her guarded expression slowly crumbling. The defensiveness in her eyes softened, replaced by a dawning, horrified understanding. And then, vulnerability. Tears welled up, tracing clean paths through her foundation. The carefully constructed facade she maintained for the world, and perhaps even for herself, finally shattered under the gentle pressure of shared experience. "How did you know?" she whispered, her voice choked with tears. "I didn't know for sure," I admitted softly. "But I recognized the signs. The exhaustion that's more than just tiredness. The need to withdraw. The difficulty waking up." I chose my words carefully, avoiding direct mention of what I had witnessed the day before or the keychain camera still hidden in my purse. The confession needed to be hers. "And Emma's note, she mentioned you sleep a lot." Sarah sank onto the bottom step of the staircase, burying her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "It started after Lily was born," she confessed between gasps. "Just something to help with anxiety, then for sleep because Michael was away so much. It just spiraled. I can't stop, Susan. I've tried. I feel so ashamed, so out of control. I banned you because I didn't want anyone to see how badly I was failing." My heart ached for her, for the lonely battle she had been fighting. I sat down beside her on the step, not crowding her, but offering quiet presence. "Oh, Sarah," I murmured, "you don't have to do this alone." We sat there for a long time, the sound of cartoons droning softly from the back room. She cried, and I listened, offering tissues and quiet words of understanding, not judgment. She spoke of the overwhelming pressure, the loneliness, the fear of not being a perfect mother, the shame that fueled the secrecy and the addiction. It was a raw, painful confession, but also incredibly brave. When the tears subsided, I spoke gently but firmly. "Sarah, this isn't sustainable. It's not safe for you, and it's not safe for the children. You need help. Real, professional help." I paused, letting the words sink in. "I will support you in any way I can. I can help with the kids while you focus on getting better. But you have to want it. And," I added, my voice gaining a necessary edge of seriousness, "we need to tell Michael. He deserves to know, and you deserve his support too. But if you're not willing to get help, Sarah, if you choose to continue down this path, then for the children's safety, I will have to tell him myself and show him what I know. Their well-being has to come first." She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed, but clearer now, a flicker of determination replacing the despair. "No," she said quietly but firmly. "You're right. I want help. I need help. I can't live like this anymore. I'm scared of what might happen." She took a shaky breath. Will you help me tell Michael?" Relief washed over me, profound and deeply moving. "Of course," I said, squeezing her hand. "We'll do it together." When Michael came home 2 days later, we sat him down together. Sarah, pale but resolute, told him everything, her voice trembling but steady. I sat beside her, a silent pillar of support, occasionally filling in details about my observations, confirming the severity of the situation without needing to mention the video. Michael was shocked, devastated, confused, even angry at first, mostly at himself for not noticing, for being away so much. But underneath it all, his love for Sarah and his children shone through. He held his wife as she cried, promising they would face this together. He looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude and a silent apology for ever doubting me. "Thank you, Mom," he mouthed. The road ahead wasn't easy. Sarah entered an intensive outpatient treatment program. It involved therapy, support groups, and slowly weaning off the medication under medical supervision. While she focused on her recovery, I stepped back into my grandmother role, not just for Fridays, but every day, providing the stability and care the children desperately needed. There were good days and bad days for Sarah. There were moments of doubt and fear, but she persevered, fueled by her love for her children and the unwavering support of Michael and, surprisingly, me. Slowly, tentatively, a new relationship began to form between Sarah and me. The politeness was replaced by a raw honesty, the distance bridged by shared vulnerability and mutual respect. We talked, really talked, about motherhood, pressure, past pains, and future hopes. I learned to see beyond the stressed daughter-in-law to the struggling woman beneath, and she began to see me not as a critical mother-in-law, but as an ally, someone who understood her struggle in a way few others could. We started building trust, brick by painful, honest brick. Today, years later, Sarah is healthy, present, and thriving. She's back to working part-time, but with healthier boundaries. Michael travels less, prioritizing family time. And my bond with my grandchildren is stronger than ever, filled with the easy joy and unconditional love I had feared losing forever. My relationship with Sarah isn't perfect. No family relationship is, but it's real. It's built on the hard-won foundation of truth, empathy, and forgiveness. Sometimes, I think about that keychain camera still tucked away in a drawer. I never showed the footage to anyone. I didn't need to. Choosing empathy over accusation, offering a bridge instead of building a wall, turned out to be the key not just to protecting my grandchildren, but to healing our fractured family. Sometimes, the quietest interventions, the ones born from understanding rather than anger, are the most powerful ones of all. Thank you for letting me share this very personal story. It's a reminder that behind people's actions, even hurtful ones, there are often hidden struggles. If you or someone you love is battling addiction or mental health challenges, please know that there is help available, and there is always hope. Reaching out is a sign of strength, not weakness. If this story touched you, I'd be so grateful if you'd like the video, subscribe for more stories, and perhaps share your own thoughts or experiences in the comments below. Your presence here makes a difference. Thank you for listening. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.